You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
Boosh. The Oilers win in OT. Let's get into it with the lead. I like seeing a little smile from Liam when I do whatever I come up with for the lead. Welcome into Oilers Nation every day, live on the Oilers Nation YouTube and live from the Sports Closet studio. Look at all this sweet merch behind me. You can get it all. Sportscloset.ca, St. Albert Mall, Kingsway Mall, Sherwood Park Mall. They also have Nation Gear, limited selection of the Nation Gear in store as well. So if you've always wanted Nation Gear, but you want to, try it on, see how it fits, head to one of their stores and check them out. The first comment today is going to our guy Les, who says, what a great game last night. Let's go for first. And yes, top spot in the Western Conference, still up for grabs, still within reach for the Edmonton Oilers. They have something to play for in Game 82 tomorrow night against the San Jose Sharks, and that is because they took care of business in Game 81 against the Colorado Avalanche, a 2-1 overtime thriller against the Avs. The Oilers also finally beating Colorado as well for just the second time in their last 10 meetings. The vibes are good. The Oilers have won 8 in a row for the first time in over 20 years, and they're rolling into the playoffs red hot. Who will they play? Where will they play? That's still largely up for grabs. I know I feel like I've been going every show saying, you wait till tomorrow. The playoff picture becomes more clear in the West. And guess what? It's still not really that clear. There's still a handful of possibilities about who this team could play. We're going to get to that. We're going to break down the win. We're going to be joined by Frank Seravalli, and Liam and I are going to give you our full ballots for the NHL awards. We're doing that today as well. So giddy up, Liam. We got a busy show.
Yep, we are locked and loaded for this one. I wasn't expecting a Bouch scream right off the top, Tyler, so that was nice and well earned by the Bouch bomb.
Yeah, Bouch bomb OT winner. We're going to ask Frank Seravalli about what Evan Bouchard's next contract could look like, because that is a big one. It could be a big one, I should say, and it is a big story heading into the offseason. But still, you give the Oilers a power play in overtime, Liam. It's almost automatic. I will say, though, he took a slap shot right before that goal. It was the slap shot that would have caused the whistle for the faceoff. And I was kind of like, why would you take that shot? You got McDavid, Draisaitl on the ice. Maybe throwing slap shots on net from close to the blue line in OT isn't the smartest play. And then seconds later, he fires home that wrister. But I actually like the shot selection on the goal. Obviously you're going to like it when it goes in. But, he kind of looked off McDavid there and really made the Avs defenders bite hard on that move. And again, if you give Evan Bouchard that kind of space lower than the top of the circles, what they'd call the ringette line in some arenas, he's not going to miss very often. That was a missile of a shot and a very good showcase, Liam, for what makes him such a good defenseman.
Yeah, the way he opens up his hips there just to kind of look off McDavid and just give himself the extra space is a show of just how much confidence Evan Bouchard has at the moment. And I think, too, he's obviously famously known in this city for his slap shot. That's why we call him the Bouch bomb. But, man, that wrist shot has been absolutely lethal for Bouchard, too, recently. So, yeah, I know there was a lot of question marks after we traded Barry, how the power play would be and everything. And I know the question has been answered now, but Bouchard is just taking his role on that power play and absolutely ran with it. And it's crazy that he was the one who scored that overtime goal, considering he had 3 100-point players on the ice with him, and he was the one that put it in the net. But again, just shows kind of the level Bouchard's at right now, and it's an elite one, I would say.
I went and watched the ESPN or TNT broadcast of the OT call, and right before he scores, I think it was Ray Ferraro who was like, the Oilers have 3 of the top power play point producers in the league on the ice, and Evan Bouchard scores. It was like that, perfect rhythm. I loved it. But Bouch finds the back of the net. Only 7 goals on the year for Bouchard. He is up to the 40-point mark. It hasn't been the most consistent year from Evan Bouchard, but since the deadline, he's been lights out. He's looked great on that top power play unit as well. The Oilers power play goes 1 for 4 in that hockey game. So if you're one of the people who is watching to see if they can finish the year with the best power play in NHL history, it's going to be very tight. Very, very tight. 32.4% is what they currently sit at. And the NHL lead is, I just lost it. Come on, I had it right in front of me. The lead, I think, is just below that. So it's going to be tight, Liam. But that's something as well to watch in Game 82 is, can the Oilers finish with the best power play in NHL history?
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be such an interesting Game 82 for so many reasons. Like, still chasing so much up until the last minute. I just love it. This is how hockey season should end for almost every single team, to be honest. It's just a great way to end it across the NHL.
Chance to go for 50 wins, as well as Joey, the backup optimist, said in the chat. Okay, 32.4 is the Oilers' current percent. 31.9 is the Habs record from 77-78. So they are 0.5% up on the Montreal Canadiens. I'm kind of just hoping for no power plays in the final game. Just don't even give the Oilers a look, and they'll be good. It's San Jose, though, so I like the Oilers' chances of hopefully going 1 for 3 and locking up that record. Again, lots to talk about. Let's get into our 3 big things, though, from last night's hockey game, brought to you by our friends at Betway. 19+, please play responsibly. And number 1 on our 3 big things, Liam, control. The Oilers seemed in control for almost all 60 minutes in that hockey game last night. They outshot the Avs 31-21 at 5-on-5. If you look at the scoring chances in every period, first period, 13-9 for the Oilers. Second period, 5-4 for the Oilers. Third period, 7-4 for the Edmonton Oilers. That was a very complete game against a very good hockey team.
Yeah, 100%. I think every area of the game, the Oilers were the better team, to be honest. Even the shots, I know the Oilers maybe had a little bit more power play time, but still, the power play really wasn't clicking that well until the overtime period. And I think 5-on-5, they did an excellent job of neutralizing the Colorado Avalanche. And I know Colorado was missing some key players, obviously, but you can only play you going up against that night. So the Oilers did a great job of limiting them. There was a couple of times McKinnon kind of came flying down the ice, but the Oilers recovered very, very well. And I think a shout out to the penalty kill as well. They did a great job. And I showed a stat. I can't remember if it was the last 5 games or from a certain date, but they were like 100% in the last maybe 5 games or so. And additionally, whatever happened last night too. So everything's happening in a good way. And yeah, just a big statement win. I think they really needed that one. We spoke about it yesterday. You can't go into the playoffs thinking you can't beat a team, and you finally get one over on them in what, again, was a very, very tight hockey game against Colorado.
Yeah. Drunk Jay says, when the Oil got the cycle going, the Avs really couldn't muscle them off of the puck. I think that's a great takeaway from the hockey game. Sergeant Battle says, Dad and the Viking, Ekholm and Bouchard, top 5 pairing going into the postseason IMO. Yeah, I mean, they continue to look really, really good, and that duo scores your only 2 goals of the hockey game as well. So some offense from the defense last night as well. Someone is complaining about 2 15-second unskippable ads. Come on, boys. YouTube sets those, not us. We have no control over the pre-roll ads.
I'll tell you how that works, though, for the person who said it. If you skip ads consecutively, you will eventually get ads that you cannot skip. So every now and then, if you've got a minute to run to the bathroom while the ads are rolling, let them roll.
That's an interesting little point. All right, we got to keep going on our 3 big things for Betway. Number 2, Stuart Skinner is officially locked in. I am making that declaration right now. He stops 28 of 29 against the Colorado Avalanche, and over the last couple of weeks, he's been statistically one of the best goalies in the NHL. His last 4 starts, stops 43 of 43 against LA, stops 20 of 21 against LA, stops 22 of 23 against San Jose, and 28 of 29 against the Colorado Avalanche. For some reason, the NHL website even says he stopped 29 of 29. I think that would be because the Oilers' goal was like an own goal. It was a weird one that started the scoring in that hockey game. But the point is, Stuart Skinner is dialed right now, Liam, and maybe he can be that next rookie goalie who steals the show in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, that would be nice. I think a credit to the team in front of him, too. He just spoke about the way they've been playing the game recently, and that has definitely helped Skinner. He's not having to make as many 10-bell saves anymore. But you look at the goals he's actually allowed. Okay, so there was the Sean Dursey one, I think it was, against LA, which was good screen, good goal. I think many goaltenders were going to stop that one. The one against San Jose was from a direct mistake from Jason Demers, and then the one last night was put in by his own player. So you have his last 3 goals there, and 2 of them were direct errors from the Edmonton Oilers. So this guy has been absolute rock star stuff right now, and let's see if it keeps going. And Jack Campbell, too, to his credit, both goalies have been playing excellent as of late.
Yeah, Campbell's been better, but obviously Skinner's going to be the guy carrying the load in the playoffs. Our third big thing last night was the return of Ryan McLeod. He spent the bulk of the game on a line with Warren Foegele and Derek Ryan, and those 3 delivered some really solid results for Jay Woodcroft. In 7 minutes and 25 seconds of 5-on-5 ice time together, they outscored the Avs 1-0. Of course, Foegele and McLeod picking up the apples on that Mattias Ekholm goal in the first period. And the shot attempts were 9-3 for the Oilers with that trio on the ice. They look pretty good. The Oilers are going to need some depth scoring come playoff time at some point. I know last year it was a lot of 97 and 29 kind of running the show, but I mean, it's just going to be that much easier if you have a bottom 6 that can consistently outplay the opposition. And it looks like they're maybe starting to get to that point. Liam, I am very intrigued about how a McLeod, Foegele, and Derek Ryan line could look come playoff time.
Yeah, I think it could be a good one. Wasn't it Ryan and McLeod who had some good chemistry earlier in the year? I think that was right. Maybe it was McLeod and Foegele. I can't remember, but yeah, he just brings an extra bit of speed to the 4th line there too, which the Oilers obviously lack when Devin Shore's in the lineup. So yeah, I like having Ryan McLeod down there, and just having that core of centerman now of McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and McLeod it's a very good middle 4 right there for the Oilers. So yeah, great first game back from Ryan McLeod, and I'm sure it'll just keep getting better and better from there.
That line, it's got a bit of everything, right? You kind of got that veteran savviness of Derek Ryan, and he's a guy who always seems to be on the right side of the puck, right? He's never going to make a bad turnover. He makes smart plays. Ryan McLeod, an absolute burner, can fly up and down the ice. Warren Foegele, when he's engaged and going, brings you a little bit of physicality, and they all have decent scoring touch as well. So I like the look of that. Last night, I'd call it the third line because they played more than Bukestad, Kostin, and Janmark, but I like the look of that, call them a bottom 6 trio for Jay Woodcroft and the Edmonton Oilers. Those are our 3 big things for our friends at Betway. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Oilers get a 2-1 win over the Colorado Avalanche and keep their chances at top spot in the conference alive. They could still play Winnipeg. They could still play Seattle. They could still play LA. There is a ton on the line in Edmonton for game 82. There's a ton on the line around the NHL in game 82. Some teams still on game 81. I know. But to break all of that down, let's get to our pal Frank Seravalli for Star Mechanical, one of Edmonton's top new home plumbing installers for the past 20 years. If you need 24/7 emergency service, boom, 780-481-8873. If you want to find out more about what Star Mechanical does and how they can help you, starmechanical.ca is where you can find them online. Frank Seravalli is locked and loaded and ready to go. Frank, how great is it that right now, like there are 48 hours more or less left in the NHL regular season, and there is one series locked in? There's a lot to play for in these next couple of nights.
Yeah, it's amazing. It goes down to game 82 for so many teams. It actually reminds me my first ever season full-time on the beat, game 82, Flyers against Rangers.
Ooh.
Winner gets in, gets the 8th seed. It goes to a shootout in game 82, and the Flyers, who never win in shootouts, beat Henrik Lundqvist, of all people, and then go as the 8th seed. They actually ended up winning the 7th spot for whatever reason and go all the way to the Stanley Cup final. My first year covering the team full time. So 2010, kind of an amazing sequence. And that's, basically what we have at stake, not necessarily in terms of in or out, although that could be the Pittsburgh Penguins on Thursday, depending on what happens tonight with the New York Islanders. All they need, 1 point. So anything but a Montreal win in regulation and the New York Islanders are in.
Out of the wild card, I won't say out of the wild card teams, out of the teams that are just kind of clinching in the final week of the season, you got Winnipeg, you got you got Winnipeg, you got Florida, and then you have one of Pittsburgh or New York. Which one of those teams do you think is the best shot to be the 2023 Philadelphia Flyers and maybe go on a bit of a run here?
It's the New York Islanders, and I actually think they're a pretty scary matchup for a team like the Boston Bruins because, I'm not predicting an upset by any stretch of the imagination. The Bruins have barely lost this year. They've got the best goalie in the league, but depending on the night, I think pretty much, universally, everyone would nod their head and say yes if you made the argument that Ilya Sorokin was the second best. You know, like I said, it could be an argument. You could say, no, Igor Shesterkin is, or Connor Hellebuck is. Whoever it is, no one would be like, oh, you're crazy saying that Sorokin is the second best goalie in the league this season. So the last thing you want to do if you're the Bruins is get goalied at any point. You head into the playoffs with all these expectations, and you're saying, hey, you know what? We're the best regular season ever in NHL history. Wins and points now after they set that record on Tuesday evening, 133 points. They've talked all season long, and especially in the last few weeks after winning the President's Trophy, about the idea of this trophy doesn't mean anything. We're playing for the ultimate prize. Well, you start to get nervous in a hurry if your team is down at any point in that series. And so that's certainly the possibility when you have someone like Sorokin in net capable of stealing a series, capable of stealing games, that for a battle-tested Islander team that has been quadrupled down on by Lou Lamoriello, they've gotten to 2 Eastern Conference finals with most of this core. Like, that's the last team that I'd want to face.
Yeah, the Sorokin thing alone would scare me. That's why in the West, like a matchup for the Oilers against the Jets would have me shaking in my boots a little bit as an Oilers fan. Like the idea of having Connor Hellebuck just goalie you a couple of times and that killing your series, like that's scary to me. And I don't think that possibility exists with a Seattle. I know Korpisalo can be that guy, but it doesn't scare me as much as Connor Hellebuck. Like if I'm the Oilers, I'm sitting there going, okay, we win our last game. It'd be great to win the Western Conference, have home ice all the way through. But a matchup against the Jets is a little like.
I don't have any of those same vibes at all. The team that I would least want to face if I were the Oilers would be the Kings. I think there's a lot of motivation for Edmonton to go out and get that number 1 seed in the West. You need help, of course, from Seattle, but and also, by the way, when you look at it, yeah, you're going to end up with the Jets if you win the West in that 8th spot. But depending on how things shake out, you could also still face the Kraken, who could jump into that number 3 spot. That, I think, is, if you're ranking the favorable matchups for the Oilers in terms of who the teams you'd most want to face, I think it would be Kraken 1, Jets 2, and then Kings 3. And the reason for that is Korpisalo has played great, but look at some of the games against the Kings this season. There hasn't been a lot really separating these two teams, and the Kings have had the Oilers' number on varying points, and really put them in tough spots. And I think going back to last season in the playoffs, the Oilers made some critical errors, and they were kind of toying with the Kings and should have taken care of business earlier. But the fact that last season, for an undermanned Kings team, then without Drew Doughty, without Victor Arvidsson up front, they still went to Game 7. So now their goaltending is vastly improved. They've added a leading scorer this season in Kevin Fiala. Again, not predicting an upset, but I wouldn't be shocked if you told me that the Oilers were playing for the Cup final, playing in the Cup final in June, or if you told me that if they played the Kings in the first round, that the Oilers lost to the Kings in the first round.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. An Oilers-Kraken series, I think Edmonton can just get by on their skill. I would have no concerns there. Yeah, an Oilers-King series, I'm sitting there going, okay, that is a dogfight, grind it out. You're going to need some lucky bounces in that series in order to walk away from it on either side. It'd be really, really tight. If the Oilers and Aaron, maybe we could just flash up the standings quickly here to run through the possibilities for everyone while we're on the topic. If LA beats the Kings or brings that game to overtime, they are locked in as the 3 seed. If the Kings lose to Anaheim and Seattle wins, they then jump LA and they become the 3 seed. The only way for Edmonton to play Seattle is if the Edmonton result, they could lose to San Jose, or the Kraken could win in overtime and the Oilers could win, because then Vegas would get a point. They'd move up to 110. Edmonton wouldn't catch them, but LA would lose, Seattle would jump them. It's still very confusing, but tomorrow night is going to be the big night that determines the seeding in the Pacific Division and really the Western Conference. Frank, I want to take this a bit of a different direction quickly and talk about one of the teams that's not in the playoffs, and that's the Calgary Flames. They had a busy summer last year. Is this summer going to rival that? what the hell are they going to do there? Like, ownership there must just be losing it. It's a tough call to make, because I don't think you can bring back both or everyone in that fold.
Felt like you kind of took a little joy in asking that question. Did you? I saw a little smile there.
A little bit. A little bit.
A little bit? Okay.
Summer of Brad. We all heard it.
Yeah, well, he was the first to say it then, I think. We're not into Stanley Cups in the summer. So he was sort of recognizing that a long time ago. But in this case, changes are coming. I can say that for absolute certainty. There is a 0% chance, and I rarely, you know me, I couch almost everything I say, so I do not speak in absolutes more, unless I'm 100% certain. There are changes coming, and there is a 0% chance that both Daryl Sutter and Brad Treliving are back together next season as coach and GM. And I'm not pitting the two, and saying it's one or the other, because it's also entirely possible that neither one of them is back. So there's a multitude of possibilities that exist. Daryl Sutter stays and Brad Treliving goes. Brad Treliving stays and Daryl Sutter goes, or they both go. But I don't see this, getting run back, at least leadership-wise, the same way. In the same token, I don't see, depending on who takes over, a ton of change coming with their roster, because so many of these guys are locked in. And there's a million reasons why we can pick through the carcass of why the Flames ended up in this spot. But they had some guys that are in the final year of their deals that are, vastly sort of exceeded what their salary cap number is. And I think of Toffoli, I think of Backlund. And there are some guys that were really disappointing that also have huge cap hits moving forward, like Huberdeau. Weegar played a little bit better toward the end, but for the most part had a rough year. And Jacob Markstrom in net, like, there's only so much change you can make for a team that's already at the cap for next season.
Yeah, and a couple of those guys, like Lindholm as well. He's a guy who's the UFA at the end of next season. 1 year left on that deal. I'd imagine if you're the Flames, you don't want to run the risk of a guy walking for nothing next year. It's interesting. I look at this roster and I feel largely uninspired by the talent they have there. And when you look at the top 5 teams in the West, Frank, Colorado has the superstar pieces, right? McKinnon and Makar. Dallas has Robertson. Minnie has Kaprizov. Vegas has Eichel. I don't see that guy in Calgary. And I wonder if they just keep trying to bring back sort of this same core year after year. Are you maybe not toiling in mediocrity and just kind of saying, hopefully we catch lightning in a bottle? I don't know if they have that one piece even coming in their system that can be that guy for them. Maybe I'm being too hard on a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau, but there's a part of me that goes, what if they just said, okay, we're selling off Lindholm and Toffoli and Backlund, and we're going to try just reboot this thing for 24 months and get a high pick next year or something like that? Is there any chance they do that or no way?
Well, there's a chance. I just think it's a more likely chance that they try and run it back and be. I think the cautionary tale with that is that you end up like the Winnipeg Jets this year, that there's a chance that you have better success, but in the end, you're the 8th seed and no one's really looking at you as a true contender. I will quibble, though, with your thought process on their roster construction, in the sense that I think Jonathan Huberdeau, after setting the record last season for most points by a left winger in NHL history, that he didn't just wake up this year and forget to play how to play hockey. And I do think that it's been a trying year from the coach perspective. He's the left winger, plays 5 months of the year on the right side. Not entirely sure why. Why did Milan Lucic spend the bulk of the season inside the Flames' top 6? There were a million head-scratching decisions, and the idea that, Nick Ritchie was the guy taking the shootout attempt was sort of the cherry on top. And so I think that's been an issue, but think about how we looked at this Calgary team to start the year. We were saying they have 3 legitimate centers. When you can put Backlund, who's going to end up on my Selke trophy ballot, in the 3 hole, you're pretty well positioned down the middle. And Kadri had a disappointing season. Huberdeau should play better. Toffoli had a monster year for his contract numbers. And we also forget that they didn't have one of their top 4 defensemen all season long in Oliver Shillington, who was dealing with a mental health issue and never came over from Sweden. So that sort of dealt them a last-second blow. And then Jacob Markstrom in net, like that is the number one issue to me for this team all season long. When you go from 922 to 892, how many points in the standings is that? 8, 10? Like, I think all of a sudden we're talking about a different Calgary team, and not to say that, they can compete with the superstar factor of the Oilers, but why is this Calgary team on paper any better or any worse than Vegas? Like, I think Jack Eichel is the most disappointing $10 million player in the league by a wide margin. You tell me. Like, I look at that team and I say they're just on par with Vegas, and Vegas won the division. Look at their goaltending and look at the numbers and look at how different that is.
Yeah, maybe I'm giving a bit too much credit to Eichel and not enough to Huberdeau. I think that's a fair point. I guess the other counter would be look at a team like LA who seems to do it with depth, right? And not having one superstar high-end offensive producer. So yeah, maybe running it back is a play that could work out. And I like that you brought up Markstrom, even Vladar. They were both under 900, 17 OT losses. Like if you have a goalie who's humming at 905 for the bulk of the season, you probably win half of those OT games, right? Like one goal in those.
That's
They had a
just
ton of
8
1-goal
points
games, yeah.
right there, let alone all
Yeah.
the other ridiculous things that happened. Jacob Markstrom giving up a pizza rebound, as they blow yet another third period lead. Like, how many times did that happen this year? A lot.
Yeah.
So I think you can cut it any which way you want, Tyler. You could make the argument that this team is no good and you need to blow it up. You could also make the argument that maybe they're a lot better collectively than they showed this season. So I don't know which way whoever's managing that team next, if it's not Brad Treliving, we'll look at it. But I think there's compelling cases to be made for both sides.
Yeah, we're going to steer this back to the Oilers here because there are a couple of people in the chat when we started the segment wanted me to pick your brain a little bit on the Skylar Brindamore situation. Is that a story at all, or is that just a guy who goes, I'm going to get a better shot to move through an organization quicker somewhere else? Like, should Oilers fans feel offended that he didn't sign in Edmonton?
Not at all. My understanding of the situation is the Edmonton Oilers were not willing to offer Skylar Brindamore an NHL deal. They offered him an AHL only contract. And he felt like, with the year that he had taking a big step forward, that he'll get an opportunity elsewhere. And I saw all the comments on social media. They were saying, oh, yeah, congratulations. You're going to get an opportunity with your daddy's organization in Carolina. And I actually don't think that's the case. I wouldn't be surprised to see a trade materialize potentially. It's getting a little bit late now, but that the Oilers just do right by the player and say, hey, we appreciate, whatever this conversation was, but, we'll set you free and we'll trade you to somewhere else for future considerations just to give you a shot somewhere else. Obviously, he can just wait until August and walk. I do think the Oilers got some feelers on Skylar Brindamore on Tuesday. Again, this late in the season, don't know if it will materialize, but the other option too is to sign him to an AHL amateur tryout contract to finish out this season, gets him playing in the AHL this year with that NHL contract to come in August for next season, whenever that's signed. So the Oilers sort of drew their line in the sand. I think they had some questions about his game and his play, and they just said, congratulations on the national championship, but we're offering you an AHL contract.
The other Oilers-related question I got for you is about the guy who scored the OT winner last night, and that's Evan Bouchard, up to 7 goals, 32 assists on the season. But it's been a weird year for Bouchard. Early in the year, struggled defensively, bunch of bad turnovers, and then Barry leaves. He gets that number 1 power play spot. Offensive production goes through the roof. Mattias Ekholm seems to be the Bouchard whisperer. The two of them have looked great together. That next contract, do you think it's a situation where the Oilers don't have a ton of cap space and they just go, hey, we're going to bridge you? It was an inconsistent year. Or do you think there's a chance that they can maybe get something done long-term-ish?
I don't see a path as currently constituted for a long-term deal. I think they're thinking bridge. I think they're hoping bridge. And if it gets to the point where he's not willing to sign bridge and only wants a long-term deal and wants to cash in now, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you could see Bouchard traded this summer. I don't think that's anything that the Oilers want to do, but at the same time, they're dealing with somewhat limited salary cap parameters. And I do think what's promising, I've eaten crow plenty of times publicly about the concerns I had for the trade, making the swap from Barry
Yep.
to Bouchard in the middle of the season on the power play. The numbers have been better. My big thing with Bouchard has always been urgency. He just, and maybe it's an eye test thing for me. Maybe it's a bias that I have that I need to get past. I don't see the necessary urgency in his game, whether it's foot speed or whatever it is that contributes to that decision-making process, that I'm like, I just wish he had a little more juice, that I think has held him back. That if he had some of that, a part of it is what has made him successful, especially at such a young age, which he doesn't really get rattled a lot. But the other part of it is like, I would like to see a little bit more of that at times in his game.
You want to see him beat the hell out of someone.
No, that's not it. I just want to see him physically, not even physically, just engage more in the play by getting to spots quicker and showing the urgency quicker.
Yeah, that's fair. The other part of this too, like you mentioned, if Bouchard only wants to go long term, I almost think, from a player and an agent perspective, it's like, hey, if you look at the back half of the season you just had with Mattias Ekholm, you're gonna play with that guy again next year. Like, I understand maybe wanting to cash in a little now, but like, if this guy has improved 5-on-5 play next year with Ekholm, plays on a bridge deal, and puts up 55 points because he's on the Oilers power play quarterbacking it for all 82 games, like, man, we could be talking about a guy who's putting himself into the $7-8 million range if he's a 55 to 60 point D-man.
Easy. And I think there was an avenue this past summer to extend him and to get to that bridge deal already. And he was already kind of betting on himself, saying, you know what, I'm going to wait and see how this year plays out. And I bet halfway through the year, he was like, I probably should have gotten that done, because even the bridge deal was going to cost him money on that, I think, based on the previous years and the numbers he had already compiled. So now moving forward, I think you bet on yourself and pocket whatever the number ends up being, 2 times 3.5, 2 times 4, whatever that number looks like. You put that in your pocket and you say, I'm playing for that $8 million a year deal moving forward after that.
Yeah, people in the comments guessing what they think it could be. I mean, like, it's not going to be. If you're going to bed thinking the Oilers are signing 8x4 for Evan Bouchard, it's just absolutely not happening. Like you said, the bridge deal could very well cost you close to $4 million. That will be one of the bigger stories in the offseason for the Oilers, but they got the playoffs to worry about until then. Liam and I are going to be given our NHL awards picks, Frank. We put on our PWHA hats, professional hockey writers, and we did the whole ballot. What award for you is going to be the toughest to kind of decipher when you're voting on? Like, what are the big decisions you've been kind of wrestling with?
So I've got my ballot typed up. I haven't hit send yet, but the only real hurdle for me has been the NORRIS, and I don't really know what to do there. I keep calling people around the league that I talk to regularly to say, hey, what do you think? Like, am I absolutely crazy pushing Erik Karlsson way down my ballot? And they throw a bunch of different stats at me, and I've yet to really hear a compelling argument as to why Erik Karlsson, who's had this amazing all-world offensive season, the first 100-point campaign that we've seen since 1992. That, Tyler, you were like -5 years old in 1992.
Correct.
Like, and so you're looking at it and you say, well, how do you wrestle with that? Plus the fact that this is an all-around defenseman award. That's not best offensive season. That's not what this is about. So I struggle with the fact that Karlsson doesn't play a lick on the penalty kill. And then people say, well, he's better in the defensive zone than you might imagine. He's got 33% more defensive zone exits, meaning he skates the puck out, than any other defenseman in the entire league. And I'm like, okay, great. I need some context for that stat. I'm not a spreadsheet guy. I'm an eye test guy. And I always look at the numbers because you're only, half complete without them. But so he tries to exit the zone 33% more. He does it successfully 33% more than anyone else. Okay, that might mean that he has 75 more failed defensive zone attempts than anyone else too, because maybe they just don't have the same risk profile. So I'm struggling with it. I tend to look way more at some of the guys that play 2.5 minutes a night. Kel McCarr is playing 3 minutes a night this season on the penalty kill. How do I wrestle with that And the games that Makar has missed this season was Makar 25% better than everyone else in all the games that he played because he missed a quarter of the season? You know, what do you do with Hampus Lindholm? Was he the best defenseman even on the Bruins this year? Adam Fox had a tremendous year. Miro Heiskanen doubled his point total from last season. Like, I really don't know what to do. I'm ready to hit send on everything else with my ballot except for the NORRIS, and I'm struggling with it. I'm kind of lost.
Yeah, when I went and did this exercise over the last kind of whatever 24 hours getting ready for the show, that's the one where I'm just like, yeah, Liam and I are going to have this debate, but like Erik Karlsson offensively was miles ahead of everyone else, right? Did something that hasn't been done since the early 90s. But does that make up for? And again, when I've watched him in games this year, I'm like, he is so disengaged in his own end. And like the amount of times he just makes non-competitive plays or attempts on pucks or on players, like it's crazy. And I just, again, even that most recent game against the Oilers, I was just watching him a couple times, like laughing, being like, how can this guy be winning the award for best defenseman this year? But he's so much better offensively. So like, that's got to be worth something. I don't know. It is a tough
So
one.
what would you do?
It'll be interesting to see it. Pardon?
What are you gonna do if you're with your hypothetical awards ballot? And maybe someday we'll get you a real one.
Yeah, that would be something. For me, I did end up putting him at number 1 just because I felt like there was a lot of guys who were very tight in a lot of the other metrics I looked at. I wanted to give it to Makar, but he missed too many games, and I'm a believer that, again, it's an in-season award. It's based on that 1 year, and you got to play the games to actually be eligible for it. And then I had, Adam Fox, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Morrissey, even Dougie Hamilton was in my brain a little bit. I looked at all those guys, and I'm like, they're all close. Karlsson was at least so far ahead offensively that I was like, I can't ignore that. Like, it's historic what he did.
So then, okay, work through this process with me. If I don't have Karlsson at number 1, should I leave him off the ballot entirely?
Don't have Karlsson. Stay off your ballot. Whew. See,
Because
and
if you're
I'd say
really
no to
making the
that.
argument that it does come down to just all around play, well, then he just doesn't have it at all, and therefore shouldn't be even in your top 5.
Yeah, but I think it's not black and white. It's not like only picking an offensive D-man or only picking a defensive defenseman. Like, you can combine those two areas. And I think his offensive rating this year is just so high that it makes up for his defensive rating being a little below average. And there's something in the middle there. Like, I think he belongs on the ballot. There is something to be said about exiting the zone and getting the puck out of dangerous areas that way versus like breaking up a cycle. They both, in a way, get the job done defensively, right?
Yeah, it depends how rigid of a voter you want to be. Like,
Yeah.
same thing with putting Draisaitl on your Hart Trophy ballot. Like, he's not going to be in my top 5. And the reason for that is the award is most valuable player in the league. And if you pick someone else from that team, then that means that he's not even the most valuable player on his team, and then therefore shouldn't be in the running for the Hart. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to have Draisaitl on my Hart ballot, even though it's maybe the second best season that we've seen from anyone in the last 20 years.
If he puts up a couple of points against San Jose, I mean, it'll need to be a handful of points, I guess, but it'll be the second best season production-wise this century. Could be third behind Kucherov because I don't think he's going to end up getting to 128 now. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's crazy to look at that. But again, rigid voters, right? There's some voters who, if a team doesn't make the playoffs, that guy's not touching their ballot. And I think now that the Panthers are in, Matt Tkachuk's a lock for number 2. But if they would have missed, he might not have been on like 50% of people's ballots.
I have Tkachuk at number 3. I have Mikko Rantanen at number 2. 54 goals this season. Like, I think he was their MVP, even though McKinnon hit 100 points for the first time in his career. But what is the chat? I don't have the chat up on my screen, but what's the chat saying about me not putting Draisaitl in my top 5 for Hart?
My pal Mainlander Tim said, "Boo Frank." So that
Thanks, Tim.
I I think they get it though. I think they get it. Like, it makes sense. Like, he's not the most valuable player on his team. You could actually make the argument Draisaitl this year has been the 3rd most valuable player on his team behind McDavid and Stuart Skinner. So like, I get it. I wouldn't have had Draisaitl in my top 5 if I was voting on the award either.
Are you saying that
It's
just to
interesting.
make me feel better? Because Tim hurt my
No,
feelings?
no. Tim's a great guy. Tim brought these beers when we met up with him in Toronto from, you'll get a kick out of this, Frank, Dildo, Newfoundland, the Dildo Brewery.
Huh. See, that's a lot
Seems
of,
like
I just said rigid voters, dildo. That's a lot of things going on in this chat today.
Seems like it's a good time for us to end this segment, Frank. Thanks for doing this. We'll chat again next Wednesday.
See you, Tyler.
Frank Seravalli for our friends at Star Mechanical and starmechanical.ca. Go give them a look. Go click around a little. See what Star Mechanical's all about. We are at the 40-minute mark of today's show, and we have not started our third segment. So, Liam, pitter patter, let's get at her. Let's tell the people what we're doing for NHL awards. And you know what? We are going to start at the top with the Hart Trophy. Are we going yours first or mine first?
This looks like mine.
Okay, you take it away. Explain, because you got Leon in the 5 spot.
I did. I put Leon Draisaitl there because I'm a homer, and also because we've spoke about this before. He's just gonna get overlooked for it, and I just think his season is top 5 worthy. Hell, it's MVP worthy, but obviously you can't put him as number 1 because Connor McDavid's there. But I just wanted to give him some credit. I guess going to 4, Ilya Sorokin, I think I spelled Sorokin wrong, but either way, where would the Islanders truly be without Sorokin? Honestly, they don't have a point per game player at all this season. I think he has the most shutouts in the league. I know his numbers don't quite match what Ullmark does, but it's a different scenario. So the fact the Islanders are likely going to squeak into the playoffs with the team that they have, it's off the back of what Sorokin's done all season. And then the top 3, I mean, obviously Frank just said Rantanen there. I don't have him in my top 5, but David Pastrnak had 60 goals. Tkachuk, I believe he had 30 more points than anybody else on the Panthers, and they didn't even have another 80-point scorer. And then, obviously, Connor McDavid, I'm not going to explain and waste my breath.
Yep. Here's what I went with. And I like that you had a goalie on there. I did as well. Our ballots do look very similar. McDavid at 1. Listen, Matt Tkachuk finished with 40-some more points than second place on that team. That is remarkable. He was a driver for them. He dragged them back into the fight when it looked like they were down and out. So Tkachuk absolutely has to be at number 2. I think there's close to being an argument that Matt Tkachuk's a top 5 player in the whole NHL. That's how impressed I've been with him down the stretch here. David Pastrnak at 3. The dude scored 60 goals. Last year, Austin Matthews scored 60, and it gave him the Hart Trophy right there. So Pasternak's got to be in the top 3 for me. Again, they were missing Marchand for the start of the year, and Pastrnak did a great job of kind of carrying the load offensively. Jason Robertson in my 4 spot, 30 more points than anyone else on his team. He finished with over 300 shots on goal this year. They barely had another player hit 200. He had 103 more shots than anyone else on that team. This dude wasn't their whole team offensively, but he was their clear-cut driver offensively. And for a team whose offensive depth I don't think is that good, and who I thought would be winning a lot of games with their goaltending and their blue line, Robertson is a big reason why they're a playoff team. And number 5, I don't love putting goalies on Hart Trophy ballots, because if you were to truly look at the definition of this award, Liam, I think it would be a goalie winning it every year if you were a literal voter. It is the most important position, and if you have an elite goalie, Hellebuck, Sorokin, even a UC Saros type, Linus Ullmark this year, if you have an elite goalie, if you were to replace him with an average goalie, a lot of teams making the playoffs this year would have missed. So I have a tough time putting goalies high up, but I just can't ignore the fact that Connor Hellebuck in 14 straight starts down the stretch allowed 3 goals or less, and that's pretty much, well, no, it is the only reason the Jets made the playoffs. So I went with Hellebuck in my 5 slot. I couldn't do it on Draisaitl. I think he might be the 3rd most valuable player on his team. So for that, I can't have him in my top 5.
With the goalie thing, I think a fair way to evaluate it is not the top teams, but teams who just squeak into the playoffs, like a Hellebuck or Sorokin, where it's okay, if you didn't have this guy, you wouldn't have made it. The Oilers had average goaltending this year. If you put Hellebuck on that team, they would have been even better, right? But they were still elite without him. So I think that's kind of how I judge a goalie on a Hart ballot. Unless you have a Sorokin kind of season.
Yeah.
Shesterkin,
Nope.
sorry.
That's fair. Norris Trophy, Liam, let's flash yours up. Take us through your top 3, your top 5 here.
The Norris Trophy. Well, do you know it's funny because I mean, I feel like Carlson's just getting this award, but I did have a good think about it when I saw he had like 100 points and he was minus like 27 on the season. And I just recalled the overtime effort he had against Darnell Nurse when the Oilers came back that game. And his defensive game is quite frankly horrendous. So I think that's good for still though. Like, I don't know. I would take him. And then Adam Fox has obviously just been great all over the ice this season in all situations. Cale McCall would have been higher for me considering he was over a point per game player, but he also missed a good chunk of the season. Josh Morrissey, we were calling him Norrisy for most of the year. I think when a lot of Winnipeg Jets players decided to not score points anymore, Morrissey was still finding a way to be an elite defenseman for that team. And then Brendan Montour, I know he's not going to be on many ballots, but I thought I'd give him a little bit of a shout out considering Florida didn't have Ekblad for most of the year. They traded Uyghur as well, and then also he set the single season record for the most points by a Florida Panthers defenseman. So I liked him to put him at 5 and just give him a little bit of a deserved vote from someone who can't
he actually
vote.
has some pretty impressive defensive metrics. Like, I have no problem with Brandon Montour being on your lineup because, again, I do think there are a lot of voters who use that 5 spot as like their hat tip spot. Like, hey, this guy had a sneaky good year and I want to give him some love because it's largely inconsequential to the top spot. But I'll flash up mine here if we have it, Aaron. Mine's similar to yours as well. Cale Makar wins this thing for me if he plays 15 more games, but he didn't, right? He missed a lot of hockey, and I just can't have him as my number one. But then I look at Carlson and I go, how could I have him as my number one? Because he's not good defensively, or he's not great defensively, but the best defense is a good offense. He moved the puck out of his zone better than really anyone in the entire NHL, and that's got to be worth something. You know, his plus minus is junk, but he played on a junk team with not good goaltending. So how can you really fault him for that? Like, if you took Carlson and you put him on the Avs, what do his numbers look like this year? His offensive numbers are better. And I bet you if you paired him up with Devin Taves, he'd have great defensive metrics. So then that's kind of where I'm like, okay, now am I punishing Erik Karlsson for being on a bad team? Because he probably was, if you talk about on-ice impact, the most impactful defenseman in the NHL. And that's eventually where I came out on it. He was the most impactful D-man in the league. And I think, yeah, that is 99% of what because of what he does offensively. But I wanted to be like, no, he's not good defensively. Can't put him on there. But I just couldn't ignore how historically good he was on a bad team offensively. So that's why I had him at number 1. I wanted to give love to Hampus Lindholm. He was sort of my Brandon Montour-esque pick, if you want to call it that, Liam. Josh Morrissey, I had 5, but Lindholm was a beast defensively. Some of the metrics I looked at on Natural Stat Trick paint him in a very, very positive light. That team didn't have Charlie McAvoy for a chunk this year. Lindholm carried the mail. He was their best defenseman this year, and I wanted Lindholm to make an appearance on my ballot. Before we move along to the Calder, I want to catch up on what you guys are saying in the chat. Les says, drop Carlson, add Trouba. No way. Jacob Trouba is just physical. He's not actually elite defensively. Peter says, Ekholm for Norris. Damn it, why not? Joel says, Nurse will get Norris votes at some point. Doubt it, but you never know, I guess. Patrick says Fox carried the Rangers D this year, 100% deserves to be there. I think he will get a lot of love, actually. I do think Adam Fox has a very good Norris case. He's won it before as well. Like, they do have that, but I think this year enough voters will want to recognize Carlson's historic year, and that will propel him to number 1. I had him at number 1, so did Liam. Let's go Calder Trophy, Liam, where I can see we're on the same page here as well, but take me through your list.
I mean, Stuart Skinner, really, where would the Oilers be without Skinner this season? I'm quite frankly not sure if they would be anywhere close to where they are at the moment. So Stuart Skinner, for me, has been the best rookie this season. Matthias Michelli, I think, being on Arizona, has put up very good numbers. He has the best points per game from a rookie that played 40 or more games, I believe it is, more than Matty Beniers. So I have him coming in at 2. I know his point total isn't quite there with comparison to Beniers, but he's also played like 15 less games than him, so I have him there. Matty Beniers, probably the best team on a playoff team in the Seattle Kraken this season, so I liked him. Logan Thompson was probably a front runner for this award for a large chunk of the year, at least in consideration to be a finalist, so up until the injury he got recently. I think it's fair to put him in this category. He kind of got thrown into the wolves with the Vegas Golden Knights goaltending situation this season, so give him some credit there. And then Mason McTavish has had a very good season on what has been a very poor Anaheim Ducks team, which was supposed to take a step ahead this season and took about 20 back, but Mason McTavish was a very good player on that team.
A lot of people loving that you have the All-Star Stuart Skinner up there. Joel says Beniers at third, ? But Joey says Liam's on point here. We can compare this one to mine, and I'm with you. Stuart Skinner's number one, but Matty Beniers had better numbers. Matty Beniers plays a more difficult position as a center. He is a top-line center on a playoff team. I think that right there is worth something. Like, I mean, we talked about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins early in his career having to deal with, like, impossible matchups, how hard that is for a young guy to survive, to thrive when he has that burden defensively. Beniers found a way to thrive with that this season, so I think he deserves a ton of love. It's going to be tight between him and Skinner. I think the voters will give it to Beniers. I have Skinner as my number one, though. I have Michelli at 3. I really wrestled with these bottom 3 spots, though. Michelli produced a lot. He was a good player on that Coyotes team. Mason McTavish was damn good, too, though. And I think long-term he's going to be the better player. But this is, again, based on one season award, not a looking forward thing. That's why I didn't have Logan Thompson on it. He got hurt, didn't play enough games, in my opinion. So Thompson, not on my ballot. Owen Power, though, was the best defenseman of all the rookies in the league this year, and I think that deserves some love, too. I think sometimes we stat watch a little bit too much with these awards, and Owen Power's stats aren't jumping off the page at anyone, but he consistently played top 4D on a non-playoff team that had some tough matchups in that Eastern Conference, and he survived them all, and I think that is worth a lot. The number 1 overall pick had a really good rookie year, so I had Owen Power as my 5, Liam, and I had Logan Thompson off my ballot. Time flew by today on the show. So, Liam, we're actually, how about we save? Let's tease. We got Jack Adams and we got Vezina tomorrow. Let's do that tomorrow.
Sounds good. I keep muting my mic because the echo keeps coming back, Tyler, and I don't know what to do. So I've muted my mic when you're talking.
Well, the show's almost over, so we don't need to worry about that. Instead, we can get to our Betway picks for tonight. Aaron, hit the button. We hit 100 likes. We got north of 350 people watching the live stream right now. Things are going well. We've almost streamed for an entire hour from the Sports Closet studio. Liam, you want to try make the people some money tonight? What do you like tonight?
Well, the New York Islanders need 1 point to clinch a playoff spot, so I just got a sneaky feeling they're going to go out there and just want to score some goals. I know I spoke about them when I was talking about Sorokin, how they don't score a lot, but Montreal allow a lot of goals, so I just feel like this one could go over now on. And then Jason Robinson, when he scored a point, he's scored 2 in his last 4 or 5 games, so I like that one at plus 162, and then the over at plus 125. I think it's also hitting back-to-back games for the Islanders or something too, so the trends are there.
I like that Robertson one, actually. That's a Dallas team that does have something to play for tonight, and Robertson, like you said, hit this in 4 of his last 5 with a total of 10 or 11 points in that span. So I really like that Jason Robertson bet. If you're looking for a shot prop tonight, the Anders Lee shot prop is a spot I would definitely look at. He's hit that in 3 consecutive games. Shout out to our friends at Betway 19+. Please play responsibly. This was a long one. Mainliner Tim says Raptors money line. Yes. Liam, do you think the Raps can win their play-in game tonight against the Chicago Bulls?
Yes, you have to say yes. We need playoff basketball back in the North here, so go Raps, even though I'm a Celtics fan.
I dig that. Braden says, I mute the stream when Tyler talks too. Okay, sure. Also, Liam, my beer league team tonight, do we avoid elimination for the 5th time this year and win our playoff game?
Yes, you guys have proven you can perform with your backs against the wall. There's no reason to doubt the Chiefs tonight, Tyler.
Hell yeah. My boy, I see Dylan Cardinals in the chat. The goalie who has saved our season. I found him by putting out a tweet saying I need a goalie for my beer league team tonight. Dylan slid into my DMs. We were on like a 10-game losing streak at that point. Since then, boom. We're now in the division finals, and we're playing tonight at Rogers Place. So playoff hockey at Rogers Place tonight. I am, as you can tell by the smile on my face, very excited for that, Liam. So hopefully my beer league team comes through and I'm not miserable tomorrow.
Good luck, Tyler. But also, I have one shout out to. Shout out to former Sherwood Park Crusader Michael Bennin, who signed a professional contract today with the Florida Panthers. Brother of Matt Bennin, who played for the Oilers. So, good St. Albert boy. Was very good when he was with the Crew and had a great career with the University of Denver, too. So, good luck in Florida to Mike Bennin.
Yes, Mike Benning, good St. Albert boy as well. So there you go. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Shout out to everyone who tuned in over the last 55 minutes. A long stream today, but we're getting ready for the playoffs. We're going on location next week for some shows. It's going to be a good time. You won't want to miss it. So hit the subscribe button on the Oilers Nation YouTube. Hit the like button on this video before you leave the show today. And we'll be back tomorrow. Sherwood Ford Giant game day, noon Mountain Time. Chat with you then, everybody.